Oh man, finally I get to take a seat. There's been so much to do this week. So many quests, so many delves. Goodness gracious. This is Jordan and Nick. We're coming at you from Freywold Village Inn, where the ale is strong and the stories are stronger.
Telling me, holy crap.
It's been a hell of a week. There's a lot people to help everywhere, whole new continent to discover.
So many exclamation points.
So many question marks too. I did. We'll get into our weeks a little bit here coming up, but I did mention we're at the Freywold Village Inn, where we have some pretty stiff things here. Actually, this is more of like a dark beer or like a IPA kind of place. It's you
Very
only
nice.
have
Little change.
Yeah, it's a good little change from our usual ales and things like that. This tavern is expertly run by Findorn, who we've actually just met recently, but he was pretty cool with us, helping out the Isle of Dorn and cleaning up some things around here. He was happy to offer us a seat. Thank you, Findorn. So grab a seat, adventurers. There's a lot to go over.
That's right. In this episode, we have an insane amount of hotfixes tonight, but that's also expected after the first week of a launch. That's not all. Stick around for our Tavern Talk section, where we're going to discuss the Narubar Palace gear, Tuerylon-Alleria getting back together, and the dirty rug that was pulled after early access.
Ooh, yeah, spicy.
Yeah.
People are not happy about that. We'll get into that.
No, it's been an interesting time on social media with that.
So we've been talking, Nick and I, about a new idea we're going to try, specifically on the YouTube side of it. So, Nick, would you break down what we're going to try?
Yep, we do have a quick channel update. We're going to be cutting all of our YouTube episodes in half. Our news segment will be uploaded at our standard time, Tuesday at 9 a.m. Our Tavern Talk segment will now be uploaded separately on Wednesday at 9 a.m. For our audio listeners on Spotify or wherever you find your podcasts, your episodes are going to be staying the same in full, with no change. That's all we had for an update. It's just something that, like Jordan has mentioned, we talked about for a while, and we think it's better for our channel to do that. Anyway, Jordan, why don't you start us off with this episode, now that we have all that out of the way. How and what did you do this week in Warcraft?
I did crunch some heroics on my mage. I'm pretty comfortable with this season's rotation. It is going to be interesting. There's a couple of ones that are bad, also because the healer has to do a puzzle in one of them, which...
Really?
Yeah, there is an add-on you can get to make it easy, or because it'll just slurp the path for you. You don't have to... So even if you're a perfect player, right, you could pick the wrong path because it's a maze that gets revealed to you as you go through it. Yep. And so there's an add-on that just tells you which way to go. And the healer's responsible for doing it. So there is a couple of quirks that we're going to have to deal with coming up with Mythics, especially because they're going to add additional mechanics to these to make them a little trickier, which is going to be interesting.
Oh, it's going to be fun.
I'm excited for it. My mage is getting ready. When we talked before the show, Nick's item level I think was a little higher, but I'm 561 on the mage right now.
I am actually surprised because you've put more time in this last week than I have. Like
I did a lot of
I
just
felt
the
like
quests,
I am so far behind, and the instant when I was like, oh my god, I'm like 3 items level higher, it's like, oh my god, it just blew me away.
Well, yeah, but I am also a lore master of Khaz-Algar.
Yeah.
I golded all the races. I've done a couple of things. So I spent my time not necessarily getting gear, just cleaning up some stuff I wanted to get done, even though the rewards for the flights aren't really actually that cool. I just wanted to do them. I did also cap my Evoker, which is pretty sweet. I've been healing on it. It feels bad. Breaking that tier set really hurt, actually. That really, really hurt my Evoker, but we're getting there. The hero talent tree is okay. It's not... I'm very excited to see what they do with the first tier set in the new raid, which we're going to cover a bit more coming up here in our War Within recap, and then also we're going to do a deeper opinions on it in our Tavern Talk. So that's pretty much all I got up to this week. Cleaned up, lore master, etc. So, Nick, what did you get up to?
Well, as you made the comment, I did kind of focus more on gearing after I capped the Ret Pally. And that's just because she's my main. So she's up to 564 eye level. I did push through some heroics at the tail end of the week, and I'm rocking towards some decent gear. I've also kind of gone back and started pushing rep grind for some 580 level items that are inside, that are like rep hidden. So there's one that you can get in the Isle of Dorn, and the Ringing Deeps is the other one. Both are 584, I believe, or 581. But so I did all that in retail and then in classic hardcore, as always, proceeded forward with the priest. We haven't died yet, so we're going to keep going. I do have a surprise coming out in 2 weeks since we already have one scheduled for upload. That we're going to change up the format a little bit on the hardcore episode, but the overall content's going to just be rocking through hardcore on characters and seeing what happens, whether we die or we make it to 60 or I don't know, whatever the hell happens. But that wraps up my week. Jordan, you had something interesting to share with everybody that Blizzard had posted, I believe.
It's actually kind of a fan-made video. We'll definitely put a link in the description to it, but it's a very quick WoW recap cinematic that covers all of the really important main storylines from when Sargeras puts the sword, in Silithus to right up to where we're at now. So it brings you all the way through after they fix all that, and then Sylvanas shatters the sky, and it brings you through everything to how we are here now. Very good cinematic. I just wanted to mention it, make sure that anybody who wanted to get a real quick summary on the lore and also figure out what kind of things they wanted to look up if they wanted to delve deeper, we're going to have a link in the description to a very good recap cinematic. All right, so Nick, would you bring us through hotfixes?
Yeah, starting off in retail, class changes. For Death Knight, Soul Rapture now correctly applies the 5% damage reduction debuff. Deathbringer, an issue causing painful death to reduce the cost of Obliterate and Morrow by 2 runes instead of 1 has been resolved. For Frost Death Knight, resolved an issue causing Frost Whelp's aid talent to display 0%. An issue causing Trollbane's Ice Fury, not taking line of sight into account, has also been resolved. For Blood, an issue causing the Blood of Life, not taking line of sight into account, has been resolved. An issue causing Dancing Rune Weapon to not function in the second phase of Rashanan's fight in the Dawnbreaker has been resolved. Moving on to Mage, Spellslinger, Arcane Orb can no longer damage enemy through walls, and Controlled Instincts can no longer damage enemies through walls. I love all the through walls hotfixes.
Yeah, I guess I had weak walls or line of sight
orientation,
problems.
not the strongest. For Arcane, fixed an issue that caused Touch of the Magi and Magi Spark to deal more damage than intended.
Boo!
Are you feeling that on the damage charts?
Well, I've been playing Frostfire, but Arcane didn't need any nerfs, let me put it that way. It was fine. It was fine. It was topping the DPS charts. It was fine.
Oh, that's why it didn't need anything, because you were playing it and it was topping. I see.
It was fine. It was murdering.
We need to put Paladin back there. Moving to Sun Fury. Gravity Lapse now properly targets 5 units and now deals its damage immediately if it's cast on a unit that is immune to roots. Even if the target is immune to roots, it will now properly affect nearby units. For Monk, Master of Harmony fixed an issue with the number of hero talent points Master of Harmony monks had while leveling. For Rogue, Deathstalker fixed an issue that caused some sources of increased shadow damage to not increase Deathstalker's plague damage effects. Resolved an issue where Deathstalker's mark applied from stealth or shadow dance was being overwritten by Deathstalker's mark applied to an active darkest night. That's a lot of darkness.
A lot of dark. That's a shadow dance. Deathstalker. Darkest night. Jockatu.
I'll just have to put in the PTSD that everybody has from the rogue going shadow.
Deathstalker.
For evokers that have been boosted are now able to access their specializations and talent window.
Yeah, no, I read about this earlier in the week. If you boosted an evoker from a low level, you could not check your talents. Just the screen did not exist.
Oh my god, that's horrible.
So you could not play it.
That's horrible. For Chrono Warden, fixed an issue where Instability Matrix was not reducing the cooldown of empowering spells when the tip of scales was used. Fixed an issue where Temporality and motes of acceleration talents would not function when Hover was cast midair. So not only did you guys not have your talent windows and specs, you also had broken stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of bad. It wasn't. There's bigger things. The gearing is actually my least favorite part about Evoker right now. Is the gearing.
Okay.
But everything other than that's fine. I thought the abilities were. That's cool that I didn't know that wasn't working, but that's cool that it is now. So
well,
thank you.
You even changed it up too, because you were like you were all for Evoker and Dragonflight, and now you're having to take a back seat. So it makes sense.
Yeah, I played PvP and PvE on Devastation and on Preservation, and then obviously PvE on augmentation because that's how you got into groups in Season 2, so.
Yeah. Going on to Paladin, the greatest class in World of Warcraft. Templar, an issue with Zealous Vindication
if.
casting.
Whatever. Yeah, I don't care. This is staying in, bro. Say it again.
Well, it is the greatest class.
No, not that part.
An issue with Zealous Vindication casting Empyrean Hammer on secondary targets instead of the main target has been resolved. Moving on to Hunter. Sentinel is now removed from player-controlled units upon being crowd-controlled. Marksmanship. Volley no longer prevents marksmanship hunters from auto-attacking. Probably good when we're in a dungeon.
Right.
Survival. Grenade Juggler explosive shot procs no longer proc from explosive shot. Instead, it will be procking from wildfire bomb casts rather than on damage dealt. Note there is going to be a brief delay in those procs.
They just changed their rotation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out for that if you're playing Survival Hunter.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, get used to. It's gonna be a little bit different AOE damage for sure.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what that does, whether it's an increase or decrease in percentage.
No, I think
overall.
it's interesting. While we are at a break here, volley no longer prevents marksmanship hunters from auto attacking. That's so interesting. It's like, oh man, I couldn't accidentally pull. Damn.
Ah, darn it.
Darn it. Anyway.
Relentless Primal Ferocity will now increase the effectiveness of existing Tip of the Spear stacks when a player casts Coordinated Assault and will appropriately remove the bonus when Coordinated Assault ends. For Shaman, Stormbringer, an issue causing Thorm's Invocation to switch to Lightning Bolt when Tempest is cast on multiple targets has been resolved. For Restoration Shaman, fixed an issue causing Primordial Wave to benefit from Undulation at the incorrect time. The bonus Healing will not benefit while the Undulation bonus is active and Healing Wave is cast. For Warrior, the worst class in World of Warcraft, Protection.
Shut up! God. I'll show you the worst fucking class. Let's duel, bro.
Face roll the keyboard. For Protection Warrior, fixed an issue that could allow Into the Fray to stack higher than intended. For Warlock, Hellcaller, fixed an issue where Soulfire and Cataclysm would consume much more mana than intended when Wither is known. Jordan, that is wrapping it up for all of our class changes. Could you move us into dungeons, delves, and professions?
Yes. So we only have one dungeon hotfix throughout the week, which I thought was a little interesting.
Honestly, for being a week with the amount of hotfixes this week, the only one being a single dungeon is kind of crazy.
Yeah, in the City of Threads, after defeating Ezo, the Grand Splicer, players can now drink an unstable mixture to return to the dungeon's entrance. So they just made it easier to get back to the front. That's the only dungeon fix. All right, cool. No pitchforks yet. You know, keep them where they're at, I guess, right? So for delves, there's a lot. They've been tweaking these a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's a brand new thing. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of fixes.
Bronze should no longer be able to target crowd-controlled enemies. Fixed an issue where Fungal Footpad's ability would not work for Demon Hunters or Evokers when in the Takrathan Abyss or in the Sinkhole. Resolved an issue where Reformed Fury could despawn immediately upon defeating Speaker Davenruth in Nightfall Sanctum. You can now call Bronzebeard to gather near you from the Explorers League supplies if he manages to wander off on his own. Maybe you should just fix him wandering off on his own. While Bron works on improving his ability dodging skills, the amount of damage that he takes from enemies has been reduced. Corrected an issue where companion experience items can persist in the inventory instead of being consumed upon loot. Interesting. I just popped them anyway, but I wonder if people were abusing that. That's interesting.
That could be it.
So for the Fungal Folly Delve, fixed an issue where Cast 3 could not be interacted with. Spore bits now die upon exploding, which, by the way, thank God. I don't know if you went into that delve and like hit a spore bit and had it just like pop 2 feet away, and then they go like the most random directions. Thank you.
I don't think I've been in that one.
Yeah, I'm glad they fixed that. Kriegval's Rest fixed an issue that could cause Tomb Raider Drywhisker to despawn during the ground slam. For the Sinkhole, increase the duration of which you can hold your breath while under the effects of the Kobis Hex, which is sweet. Earthcrawl Mines fixed an issue where players could end up being feared through a door, causing progress to be blocked. Fixed an issue where Karnk and Pegsley would not follow the player properly. For professions, they fixed an issue where sharpen your knife and carve meat would be consumed when skidding trivial enemies. Wow. Sorry, I've been working on those professions, so I didn't even know that. But Dark Moon Fair profession quests no longer give artisans acuity. Dark Moon Fair profession quests now also grant Dragon Isle specialization knowledge for players who know the associated skill line. So what this means, the Dark Moon Fair is not going to give you the acuity anymore like it used to. Now it actually just gives you straight up like knowledge for your specialization, which is good. That's one of the most tedious parts of doing a profession.
It's a very good bonus that they're doing with that change.
Yeah. So speaking of the Dark Moon Fair, it's going on right now as we speak. Yeah. And it will be going on until this coming up Saturday. So definitely, if you want to do a little bit of profession cheese, get in there and clean up that Dark Moon Fair for sure.
Always go for the cheese. Just
the
like
cheese. Fixed an issue preventing weekly enchanting quests from being available. For alchemy, oh boy. A lot of changes for alchemy, so alchemists, listen up. We're not going to go into these specifically, but there are some big changes here. Elgari Potion Cauldron and Elgari Flask Cauldron no longer require Artisan's Acuity to craft. Elgari Potion Cauldron's charges have been increased to 80. It was 40. The cost to craft has been adjusted by a similar proportion. The cost of meticulous experimentation has been increased. Its cooldown was reduced to 20 hours. It was 24, and now guarantees a recipe when used. Hell yeah. Developers' notes, we saw some feedback regarding the cooldown increase here and felt it was unnecessary when paired with the improvements to the wild experimentation. Rather than increase it, it has been decreased to 20 hours to give some flexibility for tight play schedules. Thank you. Wild experimentation has had its success chances slightly increased and the failure chances slightly reduced. Sweet. Recent catastrophes duration has been reduced to 10 minutes. It was 15. Formulated courage now prevents explosions when performing wild experimentation. Increased chance to discover recipes with thou metallurgy. Fixed a bug that caused vicious flask honor gains to stop functioning and display tooltip errors upon dying. Whew, yeah, so definitely some alchemy changes. The potions, to be honest with you, I'm just going to wait it out and see what all the prices are for the files and stuff. It's going to be pretty interesting to see how all this boils out. Tailoring is kind of interesting, too, because now only tailors can loot the cloth and things. So there's all kinds of interesting stuff happening. So, Nick, would you bring us through items and rewards?
Oh, I definitely can, Jordan. For items and rewards, the first piece of gear to drop from a lamplighter supply satchel each week will be warbound until equipped and drop at Adventurer 1. The handful of humming shinies and pile of humming shinies, big pile of humming shinies, and gem-studded candelabra can now be opened to claim their contents. Emerald and draconic marks of mastery can now be destroyed or vendored. The preseason heroic dungeon reward item level has been increased to Explorer 4/8. It was prior Adventure 1/8.
That's sweet.
That is very sweet, which I think I may need to go back and do some heroics.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably what we're doing after this, yeah?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Fix several plate items that were incorrectly using agility and intellect stats, such as Long Forgotten Girdle and Skrit's Handmade Girdle. The Ashkahet Nerubian Pheromone Secretor now becomes available at Renown 7. It was Renown 6. Unique one-time lootable treasures in Ashkahet are no longer on a 60 to 90 minute public respawn. They will now spawn and are available personally for each player until looted. Fixed an issue with Saruki Zealot's insignia where healing from a player, pets, and guardians was not reattributed to their owning player when granting Saruki Zealot's oath. Reinforced wax plating damage reduction by 50%. Antique bronze bullion may now be deleted. Thank you for my bag space back.
Yeah, you can spend it on some mogs, some weapon mogs and things, but yeah.
Speaking
that's
of
all
bronze
I did
bullion,
at the end.
For a limited time, Awakened vendors in Valdrakken are still available for you to spend that bullion instead of deleting it. The Nerubians also got into some trouble for the price of their translation potion. Potion of Polymorphic Translation, Nerubians, is now available for 33 catch instead of 500.
Oh, okay.
That's a huge drop.
I do want to touch on that. If you do have any bullion left over, this is your last chance to get recolors of raid weapons and things like that. If you wanted the mythic version of that raid weapon, you go spend your bullion on it at the vendors in Valdrakken. Definitely, this is coming up on your last chance because they're allowing you to delete it now, which means Shiga.
Right, yeah. It just means that you're absolutely done with it, so either use it or lose it. Like, pick one.
Yep. But we have some characters and NPCs, yeah?
We do! For characters, Warband mentored leveling can no longer be cancelled. Fixed an issue that allowed players to disable experience gain at level 70 instead of the intended 69 and below. Some auctioneers in Dornegal have been moved downstairs in the auction house. Adjusted the scaling of enemies in the War Within leveling content to increase their health, bringing the duration of combat more in line with expected World of Warcraft behavior. This change is mostly notable at level 70 and has reduced the impact as your level increases. Enemies at level 80 and above are unchanged. This was a big thing, and we're going to talk on it more in the Tavern Talk section, but this really upset a lot of people with, I think it was when it came out or how it came out as well. But like I said, we'll talk more on it later.
We will. I don't think it's as big as a deal as everybody's making it out to be, okay? Right. It doesn't actually hurt your leveling timing all that much, but we will get into all that in the Tavern Talk. There's some good points on both sides for sure.
For battle pets and pets,
Holy shit. Yes. Trogolo frog?
Right, that's what I was struggling with.
It's got to be like you can't say Troglofrog because that's it is. It's the Trogolofrog.
There we go.
Troglofrog. There it is.
Troglofrog no longer can spawn with an empty breed. Hallowed Glowfly no longer incorrectly appears in the Ringing Deeps. And Waxwick is no longer tradable. Jordan, I believe we have some quest achievements.
Yeah, I'll go through the quest. We'll start with the quest. The Resting Blade should now be collectible on the quest to the right hands. For Striking Steel, Spice Up Your Life, and Eagle Eye, Eagle Die are now available after a day rather than a week. It is intentional that there is a break between Part 1 and Part 2 of the quest chain. We've heard this before. There is intended pauses in these quests. Don't riot when you can't finish a quest line.
Yeah.
There are some intended pauses here. Void Ambush should no longer persist indefinitely as players progress through Kahedi's Hospitality. Lies Applaw to All and You Take No Plunder should now show the correct turn-in location.
Oh, no.
The map icon for the quests A Concerned Friend and The Last Mage should no longer remain on the map after you have completed the quest lines. Fixed a bug causing objectives for Something's Fishy to unintentionally be faction locked. Fixed an issue causing players to be able to be attacked while completing the quest Rise of the Reckoning. Destroying radiant fuel crystals while on the quest Shadows Below should no longer prevent quest completion. During a luring offer, the Beguiling Lure may now be used while stealthed. Okay, that's niche. Players should now be able to see the Storm Riders and can continue to progress through after the storm. Interacting with objects during the day that the Stoneheads came should now make them uninteractive as normal. Fixed an issue where players who had already acquired Restored Coffer Key before starting the quest Bountiful Delves were still being asked to acquire the key before the first step. Braun has eased up on things and will now count that for the quest step. So if you do end up getting a key and putting it in for the weekly quest, then now it counts even if you didn't have the Bountiful Delves quest. Increased golden experience awards from bonus objectives. Sweet, because I was ignoring them. Anhea was missing from the wild camp for the quest Open Communications for some players. He has seen fit to return. Addressed an issue preventing the intended steps for awakening the machine while Speaker Kuldas was at the quest giver. Fixed an issue where some Legion quests were unable to be completed once the War Within had been started. Made placing meaty bait optional for the quest in a pinch. The boss will now respawn if he hasn't been killed, but the meat has been placed. Moved a Deep Flayer's flying path away from the boss so it would stop engaging him. Quests that grant rewards from the Renown track should now be available without being level 80. So there's a whole ton of quest fixes. I don't want to dive into a whole ton of them individually, but a lot of these were quality of life. If you're having problems completing quests, if you're having trouble with the Renown, they fixed a lot of it. So we wanted to rifle through them all, but those aren't absolutely relevant to everybody by any means. So, Nick, would you bring us through the achievements and some events and such?
Oh, yeah. Let's wrap this up. Like we said, we had a lot of hot fixes. For achievements, Worm Theory is no longer missing its quest criteria. Kaz Alagar Lore Hunter has been temporarily removed. We will fix and restore this achievement in a future patch. for events, fixed an issue where enemies were not granting audience approval during the Cruelty of Dornick theater trope play. Another issue is fixed in the theater trope event where rewards were delayed until the next task was completed. And another theater trope event issue was fixed where enemies on the step deal with drunks could get stuck at 1% health during the theater trope event. And to bring it all home and wrap it up, for ad hoc user interface, level 80 rare enemies will no longer display an icon on the minimap for players below level 77. Itching Water's insects visuals now only show for players who have been targeted. And our last hotfix of this week, for flying, skywriting is now available in the Isle of Dorne after a Secure the Beach quest has been completed at least once on the account. And that wraps it up for all of our hotfixes. I know it's the majority of our episode for this. Thanks for sticking through it. Jordan, can you tell us what we can expect this coming week in WoW?
Yeah, we do have. So I guess I'll start with the PvP brawls, I'm sure, and what everybody's excited for. We do have the end of the Deepwind Dunk, and then we have the Shadowpan Showdown. And this is one of my very favorite brawls. I always talk about it every time it comes around. I love it because there is a boss that can only be targeted during certain periods of time, one boss or the other. And you have to, let's say your boss is able to be targeted, you have to damage your boss. And let's say your boss is not the one you can hit, then you have to try and stop them from damaging their boss. It's pretty exciting. They have the damage tuned down to where you're not doing like full PvP damage to other players, but it is definitely worth it to CC them and screw with them. And if you can kill them, it's pretty cool because they're down for a minute. So one of my favorite brawls. We do also have the Dark Moon Fair. We talked about that a little bit this week. It started on the 1st. It ends on the 7th of September. So if you wanted to cheese a couple of profession things, that's actually probably the most valuable thing that's going on in there. But if you haven't collected some of the collectibles from the Dark Moon Fair already, you have until the 7th to do it. So I wanted to go over, this is actually going to be the second week in a row we're recapping the dates for War Within. So go ahead and skip past this and get ready for some PvP updates. But just to go over them one more time, on September 10th, Season 1 comes out. And so Mythic Dungeons and the Mythic Keys unlock on September 10th. We get Narubar Palace on the normal and heroic difficulties are fully unlocked. We also get the first wing of the LFR.
It's going to be fun, though. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I can't wait for the raid. There's some cool sets. We're talking about that in the Tavern Talk.
Yeah.
There's some cool loot to be had. This is just recap. A week after that, on the 17th, we will then have the Mythic Raid will come out, which will then become the raid, or the Race to World First, I imagine. We'll start that day. And then we also have the second wing of the LFR coming out. And then 1 week after that, on the 24th, we have the third wing of the LFR coming. So just a little bit of a recap on that schedule. Pretty normal. The Mythic coming out a week after, something we're kind of used to at this point, for sure. I also wanted to cover if you see that you're doing a side quest or something like that, and you get a significant amount of the reputation. Like, it'll be 500, 1,000, sometimes 2,500 for really long or valuable quest lines. And you'll see a little red icon in the corner. I like to say it looks like a little campfire.
I like the way, yeah. I like that. That's good.
And that resembles that your warband can only get this reputation once. Once one character on the account gets it, you're done. You're done, kid. You got it. Which makes sense because they did make the renown shared among all the characters. To be honest with you, it makes sense. You can't just do another character, do all the side quests, and max them all out in 4 days. So, I get it. So, we do have some PvP updates. They have some area and overall updates, as they summed it up. Resolved an issue that caused enemies in epic battlegrounds to have more health and deal more damage than intended. Sergeant Wilson and Nassar have arrived in Contender's Gate and Dornegal for players of questionable repute to sign up as a mercenary in battlegrounds. That just means that's the one where you can sign up for the other faction if there's nobody online. So there are some items. There's a Lava Forge cogwheel damage was reduced by 70% in PvP. Storm Defender's axe damage reduced by 70% in PvP. Fearbreaker's echo damage reduced by 50% in PvP. Arathi's demolition charge damage reduced by 70% in PvP. So there are some weapons from game prior that they want to get rid of. We have a couple. In fact, the only class-specific update we have is for Demon Hunter. The Sigil of Spite talent damage is no longer reduced in PvP combat. It was 20%. Soul Rending talent effect now reduced by 17% in PvP combat was 40%. And for Havoc, Chaos Strike and Annihilation damage no longer increased in PvP combat was 10%. Throw-glaive damage no longer reduced in PvP combat was 10%. Soul Scar, the talent effect, is no longer reduced in PvP combat. The Essence Break talent damage is no longer reduced in PvP combat. The Fell Barrage talent damage is no longer reduced in PvP combat. So, Demon Hunter buffs in PvP, okay. Interesting.
It's gonna get fun.
And so that's our news updates for the week. Definitely join us. We'll be posting the Tavern Talk tomorrow on YouTube. And then if you just can't wait, you can catch the whole episode on Spotify. Nick, would you send us out?
Definitely, Jordan. Thank you for tuning in to another exciting episode of the Valley of Spirits. We're your hosts, Jordan and Nick, your go-to Horde players. Join us in Dornagal on the Mal'Ganis server, and look up our guild, the Electric Boogaloo, for some epic adventures. Stay connected with us on social media. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or X as it's known these days, by searching the Valley of Spirits podcast. Don't miss out on an episode, and follow us on Spotify or anywhere you can find podcasts. Check out our YouTube for additional content not found on podcast platforms. Until next time, may your quests be glorious and your loot be plentiful. And as always, for the Horde.